Hello and welcome to another edition of CFBC Through the Years. I'm Don Barry, and as you can plainly see, I'm standing outside in our parking lot. Now, through the years, I have learned a lot about church attendance. There are many factors that come into play when it comes to getting people to visit our church. Now, amazingly, parking is one of those factors. Let me take you back 25 years. 25 years ago, parking was a premium here at Chester First Baptist. On any given Sunday, our lot, which was a little more than a driveway, I'm standing about where the edge of it was, and it could only hold approximately 15 or 20 cars. We would either park out on State Street or over on Cedar Street. Some of us would park behind the parsonages, and a lot of us behind the church or over in the parking lot at the library. You see, we were spread out far and wide. You know, that's not exactly a welcoming thought to visitors to our church, especially if the weather wasn't good. Now, our pastor at that time was named Brian Law, and Brian Law had a vision. He had a wish on his prayer list, and you see, next door to the church, approximately over here, was a big, enormous old house. It was owned by an older lady named Mrs. Young, and unfortunately, she was failing in her health. Brian had hoped that she would consider possibly selling her property to us when the time came, and that she would allow the church to have those first dibs on the building. Well, weeks, months passed, and finally the church received a call from a relative of hers. And indeed, her house was for sale, and indeed, the church had first option. Our only problem was we didn't have much money. But fortunately, God moves in many different ways. And He moved in several people's hearts, and the money for the purchase came in full. The old house came down, and soon our parking property size doubled. On this corner sat the Paulus house, and it became available a few years later, and again the church was determined to be a buyer, and it too was purchased and taken down. And now our parking lot was even larger. So now we owned a pretty big section of parking, and the only other residence sat on this corner. Two men had purchased this house back when they moved to Chester. The house itself was built back in the late 1800s. It was a farmer dentist office. It was a farmer chiropractor's office. It was a farmer CPA's office. And now it was a private home. The old building had two separate add-ons to it, and they were attached to the original building. It also had a small one-car garage. Now, again, sadly, one of the men who lived there became very ill, and they decided to sell the house, and they offered it first again to the church. Their wish was that we would never tear it down. Well, by now, our pastor was Mike Fogerson. It was decided to move the church office from its current location at the Rock to this new location in the new corner house. Okay, and I'd also like to mention that we were able to buy all of these properties, tear them down, create parking without going greatly into debt. And then, in addition to this area, the Frager property directly behind me, behind our church, became available, and we were able to purchase it as well. So in a short 25 years, we went from a driveway and street parking to having more than enough space for our visitors and members to park. It has allowed us to also host several big events, and we are able to have outdoor services here during the last 2 years. A new retaining wall was put into place 3 years ago, and we have slowly been adding concrete to our parking area. God has truly blessed us with this space over the last 2.5 decades. Come back and see us next week. We'll have more history to share. Thanks for watching.